April 1774. 11 years have passed since British victory in the 7 Years' War, and since that moment, ties between the 13 colonies and the motherland have been under increasing strain. Much of the dispute is over the British Parliament's right to tax the colonies. A right fiercely contested by many colonists, but it is also a conflict over sovereignty, about who governs in North America. On the frontier, and for all colonists who have a stake in westward expansion, there are added reasons to resent the British government. This is where the 7 Years' War, known locally as the French and Indian War, had started. The first shots were fired in 1754 in Ohio country by troops under the command of a 22-year-old Lieutenant Colonel George Washington. After the war, the British hoped to end clashes with Native American tribes and bring peace to the frontier. And so, in 1763, a royal proclamation is issued, imposing limits on further westward expansion beyond the Appalachian Mountains, into the land now termed Indian Territory. For colonial land speculators, pioneers and farmers, the proclamation cuts off access to a vast source of cheap land and stokes further anti-parliamentary feeling. The colony's list of grievances seems to grow year by year, and with each new attempt by the British Parliament to assert its authority, colonial resistance grows fiercer and bolder. The destruction of 46 tons of East India Company tea in the so-called Boston Tea Party is the final straw. Lord North's government decides to make an example of Boston and the colony of Massachusetts. In the spring of 1774, the British send 4,000 troops to garrison the colony and pass a series of measures known as the Coercive Acts. The governor is replaced by a new military governor, General Gage. Boston's port is closed to commerce by Royal Navy blockade. Representative assemblies in Massachusetts are limited, and it becomes easier for British troops to requisition housing throughout the colonies. The British government also passes the Quebec Act. To appease French Canadians, Catholicism is to be tolerated in Canada, but to the ire of staunch New England Protestants, large tracts of Midwestern land are also allocated to the province of Quebec, further antagonizing American colonists who had their eyes on the land. In America, the Coercive Acts quickly become the Intolerable Acts, and the effect is the opposite of that intended. The colonies rally in support of Massachusetts and in defiance of the latest act of parliamentary tyranny. In Virginia, the House of Burgesses declares its support for Massachusetts and is promptly shut down by the royal governor, Lord Dunmore. So Virginians reconvene in their own assemblies and once more call for their rights under the British Constitution to be upheld. One of the most radical statements comes from Fairfax County, where the meeting is chaired by local patriot landowner George Washington. 10 years earlier, the colonies did not dare to claim only they had the right to govern themselves. Now, they don't hold back, as the inhabitants of the American colonies are not, and from their situation cannot be represented in the British Parliament. The legislative power here can of right be exercised only by our own provincial assemblies. The powers over the people of America, now claimed by the British House of Commons, must, if continued, establish the most grievous and intolerable species of tyranny and oppression that ever was inflicted upon mankind. Virginian patriots call for a Congress, composed of delegates from the colonies, to meet and discuss a collective response to the latest crisis. Such calls are echoed across the colonies, and in October 1774, the First Continental Congress meets in Carpenter's Hall, Philadelphia. It is attended by 52 delegates from 12 of the 13 colonies. Among them, several men who will play key roles in the struggle ahead. John and Samuel Adams of Massachusetts, self-made men, incensed by the British occupation of their colony. John Dickinson, a moderate from Pennsylvania who seeks reconciliation with Britain, and Patrick Henry, the radical from Virginia who holds what for most is still an extreme position. total independence from Great Britain. Despite their divisions, a compromise is reached. The colonies agree to boycott all British goods until the Intolerable Acts are repealed. They will also send another petition to King George III, listing their grievances while expressing continued loyalty and desire for reconciliation. We ask but for peace, liberty and safety, your royal authority over us and our connection with Great Britain. We shall always carefully and zealously endeavour to support and maintain. Their petition never receives a formal response. The First Continental Congress cannot solve the crisis, but it has demonstrated that the colonies can come together to debate shared grievances and form a plan of action. The delegates are impressed with their fellow Americans and recognize the importance of their task. A new sense of solidarity inspires confidence that, if required, they can work together again for the common interest of all. In America, the long history of colonial and frontier wars means most British colonies maintain their own militia. Now these part-time citizen soldiers are training regularly under local officers, anticipating a confrontation with the British. It's a growing concern for General Thomas Gage, the British commander in North America, with 4,000 troops in Boston. He's also worried about the gunpowder reserves held at strategic locations across Massachusetts for use by government and militia forces. With tensions running high, control of the gunpowder becomes a priority for both sides. In September 1774, Gage sends 260 men to secure a powder magazine in Suffolk County, Massachusetts. In such a suspicious atmosphere, the sight of British redcoats on the march ignites wild rumors that villages are being attacked, civilians massacred, and that British warships are shelling Boston. None of them are true. Nevertheless, thousands of angry patriots gather in the streets of Cambridge, prompting local loyalists to flee to Boston. The patriots disperse the next day, but both sides are rattled by the incident. That winter, General Gage pulls his forces back within Boston and begins to fortify approaches to the city. He also requests reinforcements from Britain. Parliament delays. The British army is tiny, and sending troops to America is expensive. But with each passing month, colonial opposition grows stronger and more impassioned. In February, Parliament declares parts of the colony of Massachusetts to be in active rebellion. On 23 March 1775, Patrick Henry addresses the Virginia Convention. If we were base enough to desire it, it is now too late to retire from the contest. There is no retreat but in submission and slavery. Our chains are forged. Their clanking may be heard on the plains of Boston. The war is inevitable, and let it come. I repeat it, sir, let it come. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. The following month, General Gage receives orders to disarm the local militia and arrest its leaders. He targets a small town 20 miles from Boston called Concord, where he believes Patriot munitions and stores are stockpiled. But the Patriot militia know the British are coming, and the long simmering standoff between Britain and its colonies is about to explode into open warfare. 19th April, 1775. Around midnight, 700 British infantry, drawn from elite grenadier and light infantry companies, cross Boston Harbor in boats and begin their march to Concord. They are led by 51-year-old Colonel Francis Smith, who's been stationed in America for 8 years. His operation is supposed to be secret. The route has been carefully planned, and British scouts and spies patrol the countryside. But the Patriots have their own spy network in Boston, and before the British have even left the city, several Patriot horsemen, including Paul Revere, have ridden out to raise the alarm across eastern Massachusetts. In Lexington, militia captain John Parker is alerted to the approaching British column. He gathers 80 militiamen on the village green to observe their advance. Around dawn, at 5 a.m., the head of the British column arrives. Redcoat officers order the militiamen to lay down their arms. Shouts and jeers are traded. Then a shot rings out, from which side is not clear. The British regulars fire a flurry of shots. The militia run for cover. 8 lie dead or dying. Just 1 British soldier is wounded. This small skirmish, lasting just a few minutes, is the first clash of the American Revolutionary War. The British march onto Concord, but the element of surprise they've been counting on was lost hours ago. On arrival, the British discover most of the Patriot stores have been hidden or removed. They spread out across town to destroy what they can find. Meanwhile, a large militia force gathers to the north, on a hill overlooking the town. They include several companies of the famous Minutemen, picked men from local settlements, ready to march at a minute's notice. 400 strong, they outnumber the British detachment guarding North Bridge 4-1. The militia are agitated. There are rumors of a massacre at Lexington. They can see smoke rising from Concord. Under pressure from his men to act, Militia Colonel James Barrett orders an advance to the bridge. Both sides have orders not to fire first. But alarmed by the approaching militia, the British fire a ragged volley. The militia return fire. A handful of men fall killed and wounded on each side. The outnumbered redcoats turn and run. The militia, stunned by their own success, do not pursue. A standoff resumes, but now, with bodies from both sides strewn across the battleground. The British commander Colonel Smith recognizes the danger of his position, and around noon, he orders his force to march back to Boston. By this time, thousands of Patriot militia are lining the road. They mount a series of ambushes on the British, targeting officers, several of whom are killed and wounded. The British respond by bursting into homes along the route to clear out rebel marksmen, bayoneting anyone they find within. The British march descends into a shambolic retreat. Around 2 p.m., Smith's force reaches Lexington, where they are met by reinforcements from Boston, Lord Percy's brigade, 1,000 strong with 2 cannon. They face nearly 4,000 Patriot militia. Percy's 2 guns open fire, dispersing the militia and buying the British some time before the retreat continues. Lord Percy oversees a more disciplined fighting retreat, but militia sniping claims a steady toll of his men. As the embattled redcoats approach Boston, they veer east to avoid another large militia force gathering at Cambridge. They reach the safety of Charlestown around nightfall. Many British soldiers have been marching and fighting without rest for almost 24 hours. All told, they have lost 73 men killed and 173 wounded. The Americans, 49 killed and 39 wounded. It was nearly much worse for the British. As Lord Percy later writes of his rescue of Smith's force, "I had the happiness of saving them from inevitable destruction. Of their opponents," he adds, "whoever dares to look upon them as an irregular mob will find himself much mistaken. They have men amongst them who know very well what they are about." By the scale of 18th century warfare, the battles of Lexington and Concord are not much more than skirmishes, but the ramifications will be seismic. In the aftermath of the fighting, 15,000 militiamen encircle Boston. The British are under siege. Massachusetts is in open rebellion. The news spreads like a shockwave. 3 weeks later, a second Continental Congress gathers in Philadelphia. Delegates had expected to be busy coordinating further protests. But suddenly, with the colonies in open conflict with the British, they begin to take on the work of a wartime government. Congress appoints a committee to secure military supplies, votes to raise loans to pay for them, and issue bills of credit. It also passes resolutions to reach out to potential allies in Canada, Britain's Caribbean colonies, and among Native American tribes. Many delegates are veterans of the First Congress, but they're also new faces. The celebrated inventor Benjamin Franklin of Pennsylvania, who has returned from England. He is appointed Postmaster General with orders to establish a new postal service. Then there's the wealthy merchant John Hancock of Massachusetts. And in June, they are joined by the young lawyer Thomas Jefferson of Virginia. But Congress's most urgent priority is to form a united Continental army that can stand against the inevitable British response. It is obvious that the large militia forces around Boston will be the army's foundation. But who will lead them? For many in Congress, there's only one man for the job, the 43-year-old Virginian delegate, George Washington. He's well known for his patriot views and admired for his military service in the French and Indian War. As a not-so-subtle reminder of his credentials, the 6'2" Washington attends Congress in his Fairfax militia officer's uniform. John Adams, who nominates him for command, also believes appointing a Virginian to command New England troops will bolster the colony's unity. On 15th of June 1775, Congress unanimously approves Washington's appointment as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. He agrees to serve without pay, only expenses. Yet he, like many Americans, is dismayed by the prospect of war. Unhappy it is that the once happy and peaceful plains of America are either to be drenched with blood or inhabited by a race of slaves. Sad alternatives. But can a virtuous man hesitate in his choice? In the tumultuous years ahead, many delegates will question the decision to give Washington command, but ultimately it will prove one of the best decisions ever made by Congress. The challenges Washington will face are immense. To form a professional army from scratch, with half-trained contingents from disparate colonies, to take on one of the world's most successful military powers. And before Washington can even reach the army, he learns the British have already attacked.